Welcome everyone to our first WeCREATE event. We are very happy to be launching WeCREATE today on International Women's Day. My name is Femke Kool and I work at the Cambridge Centre for AI in Medicine, which is part of the University of Cambridge. I will be moderating today's session and Professor Michaela van der Schaar will be leading the session today. Later we will be joined by our wonderful panelists as well for a discussion, so I will introduce everyone to you a bit later. First, I would like to give you an idea of what to expect from today's event. So we have started WeCREATE as a way to encourage and inspire girls, female students, and young female professionals to embrace creative careers in engineering, computer science, applied maths, and similar areas. We know that girls or women can often feel like these sort of careers are not for them, but we hope to dispel those myths and change your view about these areas. And hopefully also by, by showing you and talking about the work that women do in these fields, we can make you feel like it's also for you and it's not out of reach to aspire to these jobs. We are going to do this by highlighting female role models. They each have their creative takes in their professional fields, which we'll be talking about later, and you'll have a chance to ask questions too. So after my short introduction, I am going to hand over to Michaela for her welcome presentation. She will tell you a bit more about WeCREATE and the idea behind it. We will then be joined by our panel for a discussion about their work, their background, and their experience as a woman in these fields. And at the end of this, we will answer some of the questions you might have. So during the whole session, feel free to post any questions into the chat box. We would really like to hear from you, and we would like to learn what sort of questions people have and what they would like to know, because that will also help us to plan our future sessions. So at any point, post questions in the chat box. We will then answer them later at the Q&A. If your question is for a specific person, please put that in the chat as well, because that would be good to know. Don't hold back any questions you may have. And then at around 5 o'clock, we will wrap up with a few closing words from me again. So I will now hand over to Michaela for her presentation. So if you have any questions to her, please post them in the chat and we'll try to answer those later as well.
Thank you very much, Femke. Hello, everyone. I'd like to start by saying that I absolutely love being an engineer. As an engineer, I create and build new worlds. Through the problems I solve, I get to design and build solutions that can transform the world for the better. And in many spheres, women are as creative or even more creative than men. But for many reasons, women rarely choose the STEM topics to show off their creativity. So I have decided to launch WeCREATE engagement sessions to highlight the extraordinarily creative work of those of us who work in the STEM subject. And my aim is to inspire more women to embrace careers in engineering, in computer science, and applied mathematics. Traditionally, society has taken a relatively narrow view of creativity, captured by the phrase creative arts. And when we hear that, we think of painters like Marie Cassatt or Berthe Morisot, or writers like Virginia Woolf or the Georges, Eliot and Sons. Where the arts are creative, supposedly the sciences are not. And I believe it is time to change this limited view. I'm going to use WeCREATE to show you the wonderful examples of the creative sciences, where women have built elegant solutions to complex problems using algorithms and systems. You will have the opportunity to listen to talks about a variety of exciting projects that our speakers work on. Ask us questions, interact, network, find out about opportunities, get inspired. And before we start, while this engagement session is mainly dedicated to young women, we of course also welcome men and anyone, whatever their age. The only requirement is to have a passion to learn more about this creative world, whether it's engineering, computer science, or any other field. Okay, so let us get started. Famke, back to you.
So next up will be the discussion with our lovely panelists. I would like to introduce you to everyone. We have a wonderful panel with people who have different backgrounds and come from different places, work in different areas. We have Alize Pache. She's a PhD student in machine learning and a fellow at ETH AI Center in Zurich. We have Effie Tsamura. She's a senior researcher at Samsung AI Research. We have Ewana Bika. She is a PhD student in machine learning for healthcare at the University of Oxford and the Alan Turing Institute. We have Chen-Ying Hu. She's an IBM fellow and global science leader for AI for healthcare and the director of HCLS Research, IBM Research. And we have Tara Javidi, Jacobs Family Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of California, San Diego. So thank you all for being here today and joining us for the first WeCREATE session. We are very happy that you've made time to join us here. And we can't wait to hear more about your background and how you've come to where you are now. So Michaela will be asking you some questions. I just want to remind all participants that you can post questions in the chat box as well. So if you think of anything, please feel free to post it and we'll answer your questions at the end of the panel discussion. So I'll hand over to Michaela for the first question.
So my first question to you, the panelists, and thank you so much all for joining me. I'm really very thankful to you for giving your time to this initiative. So my first question is, can you tell us, maybe giving a couple of examples, how you think your work has enabled you to develop and apply your creativity? And I'm going to start with you, Tara.
So this is a great question, and when I read the questions you shared with us, I was thinking the answer changes as you progress in your career, and so I'm gonna just focus on the latest that I could think of in my career. It's fairly later and I could think of earlier, but I will leave that to the other panelists since they're closer and hopefully their recollection is more precise. So one example that sort of is very close to my heart is I was attending a talk by a cognitive scientist. My own background is very technical. My work is in between electrical engineering and applied mathematics. I don't know much about biology and human brain and so on. It was just sitting in this talk. It just sounded an interesting talk by a cognitive scientist talking about how our brain processes visual information. And she was describing this study that she was running with monkeys doing tasks and then be rewarded. So she's sort of interested in understanding how the reward structure will affect the way they operate or they optimize their, in our language, they optimize their behavior. And in particular, she was interested in the ways that humans, monkeys, animals use their eye movement to perhaps look for a specific kind of information. And as she was talking about this, I started thinking, this is not only a question about how our eyes move, like how can we, think about any engineering system. When you think of sensors, there's some versions of the eye, and we have, as engineers, have ways of controlling these sensors modality. We often don't. We design the sensors and leave them in some sort of a design, and they collect information. But potentially we could do the same thing that our eyes are doing, which is for every task we sort of optimize what my strategy be. And she was explaining that as the monkeys get trained, they start really controlling the way they're gazing at the screen, both in terms of how they track, but also zooming in and out. And I immediately was thinking, oh, I could do this with cameras. And I'm a little bit obsessed. I have a multi-story house and I traveled a lot at the time. This is way before the pandemic. And I thought, this would be a really good way if I could. And one of the problems I have had is the security cameras cannot capture my house. It's a multi-floor house. And when I'm out of town, I had a lot of false alarms that the police would come in and they charge me for false alarms, some $100 or whatnot. So I thought, oh, can I just use this and decide where cameras should look at time when I get the first indication of a false alarm? Can I have the camera sort of look for potential behavior that I would think it's anomaly? And it's just, ways, and some of it is the benefits of being in an academic institution. I started thinking about this completely new problem, completely from a context that I was very unfamiliar with, and this is now a good 12 years of thinking about this problem and applying it in all sorts of engineering applications, from the ways drones can fly and look for, let's say, leak for environmental monitoring in oil and gas fields, to, the ways we build wireless systems and how you can actually control the sensors, the way we monitor traffic in the internet for anomaly behavior, and sort of it's endless. In fact, my students joke that any problem I hear nowadays, I turn it into this classical problem in the field of information theory and statistics. So I think this is a sort of a great example of just very few jobs allow you to just sit there and think about a completely abstract cognitive science problem and then translate it to real world technology development that my group has been able to do. So
thank you, Tara, very much. So let us move to somebody in industry then. Janning, what about you?
Thank you, Michaela. First of all, I really want to thank you. And
we can't hear you.
Janning, I think we don't hear you. Sorry.
we could hear you at the start.
Now.
We can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, wonderful. So sorry about that. I first want to thank you and Femke for organizing this event. I'm so happy to be part of it. Now, in my case, I have always worked in industry research organization, as Michaela, you pointed out, starting at Bell Labs and now continuing at IBM Research. So to me, what draws me to industry research is the proximity to real world problems that it tends to offer. For some people, you have to be completely unconstrained in order to be creative. But for me, the real world problems are actually what inspire creativity. There's this old saying that necessity is the mother of invention, and that certainly applies to me. So one of the things that I have enjoyed most in the past 12 years or so of applying machine learning to healthcare is to work very closely with healthcare domain experts to really understand their most pressing problems, and then think of creative ways of bringing machine learning to bear to help solve those problems. So one example that I can share with everyone is the work that we have been doing with a foundation called CHDI, in finding cures for Huntington's disease. So Huntington's disease is a terrible, terrible neurodegenerative condition that is inherited with very complex manifestation across cognitive, functional, and behavior motor dimensions. And like all neurodegenerative conditions, it unfortunately currently has no disease-modifying drugs, right? So the focus of CHDI Foundation is to accelerate therapeutic discovery against Huntington's disease. And one of the many ways of accelerating it is to see if there are better ways of modeling the disease and assessing the progression of the condition so that we can identify biomarkers to be able to better stage the patient, to enrich clinical trials, which means to identify the right patients to enroll in a trial so that we get the patients who are more likely to benefit from a new drug, and therefore we have better chance of establishing the positive effect in the trial if there is one. And it turns out that this disease progression modeling is actually very challenging, not just for Huntington's disease, but for most of the chronic conditions. And in the case of Huntington's, the foundation made huge progress over the last 15 years to engage the communities of patients and families and collect a lot of longitudinal data of clinical assessments throughout the disease course. But even when we have all that data, there are still a lot of challenges in actually building disease progression models from this data. Two of the biggest challenges is, number one, as I mentioned, the disease is complex, right? You have many multidimensional aspects of manifestation, and traditional statistical models have difficulty accounting for all of these dimensions simultaneously. And the second challenge is the data collected from multiple registries are fragmented in terms of the particular stage they cover. So when we looked into this problem with the domain experts, we realized that a lot of the probabilistic temporal modeling methods, such as variations of hidden Markov models, could be very helpful here. So we came up with creative ways of training a continuous hidden Markov model that can, in some ways, stitch together data coming from multiple registries and capturing these multidimensional clinical measures simultaneously. And then we worked with domain experts to iteratively analyze and validate these models to ensure clinical meaningfulness. And we finally arrived at a 9-state model that was recently published in Movement Disorders, which is one of the top medical journals on neural conditions. And people are very excited because it's the first time the field is equipped with a comprehensive model that can simultaneously account for all the different dimensions of clinical measures and also covers most of the disease progression course from pre-symptom phase to transition to late stage, right? And the most important thing is, in this case and in many other cases as well, it's not that you can just take some model off the shelf and apply to it. You really need to have creativity in terms of understanding how to address the specific priorities coming from each use cases.
Yanning, sorry to interrupt. When I hear you talk, very interesting and very creative, but as some of the younger audience we have who still didn't decide which way to go, they may say, well, but these are problems that maybe if I become a clinician, I become a doctor, I could address them. Why become a computer scientist or engineer? Why do STEM to address these problems that you mentioned? Do you have any advice?
That's a really good question. And I would say one thing with being in STEM and math and engineering and computer science field is actually the opportunity to work with many, many different domain experts, right? To address real world problems coming from many, many different areas and have an impact. And that to me actually is a very unique angle where it affords you many different ways of being creative. Right.
And not only helping one patient at a time,
Exactly.
but hundreds or thousands at a time.
Exactly.
Ivana, may I now turn to you? Of course, you didn't start yet your career. You are still studying for your PhD, but what about you?
Sure, yes. So first, I also wanted to thank you for organizing this and for inviting me to be part of the panel. So to answer this question about creativity, I would say that because my background is in computer science, a lot of the work that I've done in computer science have involved like problem solving. And this by definition requires creativity to come up with the best and most efficient solutions. And this is something I have really enjoyed a lot while growing up and being in like secondary school and high school and participating in algorithmic competitions, being able to use this creativity to solve algorithmic problems. However, I would say that the work that has maybe allowed me to be the most creative so far has been my PhD research. And this has also focused on machine learning for healthcare, and in particular on building causal inference methods for estimating treatment effects. And I would say that this has allowed me to be creative is because a lot of the work involved like reading and having a critical understanding of what has been done so far, and also trying to understand what are the shortcomings of the existing methods to find out creative ways to address them and build better tools. So I also have a specific examples from healthcare here about my research in particular, because for instance, when I started my PhD, a lot of the work that was done in causal inference has mainly focused on building these tools for treatments in the static setting where you only have binary treatments. But an important problem in medicine is also being able to understand what's the effect of time dependent treatments, such that we can understand how patients progress through diseases when you give to them different treatment plans and how to select among these different treatment plans. And I would say that the fact that this problem hasn't been addressed so much before was a good opportunity for me to innovate and create better tools. And to be able to do this, I definitely need to use my creativity to come up with these solutions.
Thank you, Ioana. Full disclosure, Ioana is my PhD student, so I was delighted when she said that that was the best, most creative time. Shall we move now to other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Famke. So my second question to the panelists is, what convinced you to pursue a career in engineering, computer science, or applied math? And Effie, I'm now going to turn to you.
Michaela, many thanks for the invitation, and I'm really glad to be here in this panel. And congratulations for the great initiative. So nobody convinced me. It was my passion for math and technology that led me here. I was participating in math competition. I believe that math is the only tool that gives us the ability to formalize, to prove, and to systemize. So for me, math is magic, it's not only science. And that's why I decided to pursue this career. And I see that essentially modern industry is not asking only for engineers in order to program solutions. It asks for people with creativity, people that have strong background in mathematics, in foundational sciences and research in order to develop new products, in order to develop new solutions. So that was the reason for which I followed this path. And there is also one small thing, but this is very small. For me, it was also a challenge because especially in Greece, you could find mostly men following this career. So for me, it was also a challenge to show that a woman can be equally good with a man and do something that could potentially distinguish me from the other people.
Effie, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in there and say, yes, I think that's wonderful that you have been a math Olympiad. But what I would like to tell the younger women in the audience is I think math is wonderful, of course, and is important. But I don't think it's the only thing or the essential thing here.
No, definitely.
Because math is beautiful, we need it, but it's very constraining. The problems are very well defined by mathematicians, very rigid, at times boring. And of course, math is useful. But what I'm excited personally, since I'm not the panelist, but to interject there, since we don't want to give the wrong impression to the young women. Sure. Is that in maths, you are very rigid and maybe there is less creativity. You need intellect, but maybe less creativity. What I think it's wonderful as you are progressing in these fields of engineering, computer science, applied math, we can paint with all sorts of algorithms and math we go beyond math. Yes, we use some basic math tools, but we have the opportunity to think out of the box, to invent algorithms, to invent ideas.
Sure.
That go, I think, beyond just math.
Sure,
It's
sure,
not that
sure.
you don't love math, but
Sure.
sorry for that. I just
sure. I would like to say sure. I would like to say two things on my defense. First of all, of course, yes, the current the computer science is based on math. It's based on the foundations that were led by Alan Turing. However, we wouldn't be in a position to hold this event unless we had fantastic engineers in order to realize all this magic. So obviously, yes, engineering is something mandatory in the modern world. We wouldn't be living in this world.
And more creative, maybe, because we take math constants and play with them. Sorry, I let you go. Sorry for that. It's not.
Sure, I'm not dismissing. So
I just want to tell
if we didn't have engineering,
math, it's even more fun than math.
it's even more math. But to my defense, and not to my defense, to math's defense, there are ways to combine rigid logics with uncertainty, and to say something more provocative. Actually, what I'm seeing very recently is that machine learning can benefit a lot from math, can benefit a lot of logic. So now we hear a lot about neurosymbolic AI. Why is this? It's because the two formalisms are quite complementary. So with logic, we can inject background knowledge that is very difficult to have in deep neural networks unless we train them a lot with many data. So yes, engineering is amazing. We wouldn't be living in this world without engineering. But okay, math
my point is not one is amazing. It's just that there is a lot of creativity.
There is a lot of creativity outside math.
Whether it was good in math or less good in math, we are now playing beyond math.
Sure. A lot of creativity in engineering, in biomedicine, a lot of computer science. Obviously, yes. I would just answer the question from my perspective, of course.
Sure. I just wanted not to scare people who may not be math Olympians.
No. That was not my intention at all.
Alize, what about you? What do you think about this? What convinced you? Then please don't say only math and math Olympians.
I think for me, initially, definitely what drew me to engineering, computer science, all of this was definitely the creative aspect. So as like a 17, 18-year-old, I was like, okay, what would be an exciting way to spend my life? And I was definitely thinking about like all the science fiction ideas that you read about, like nuclear fusion, flying cars, this sort of stuff. And so I thought, okay, it would be super exciting because there's so many cool things to be done with engineering to go down that route. So that's, I think, what initially geared me towards there. And then probably, actually studying all of these topics, I got a more realistic picture of the field, which is as exciting as this. It's just there's also less science fiction grandiose projects. And I realized that actually, for me, an actually more important aspect than this was also really the impact that I could have. And that's also what we've discussed about earlier. The really exciting thing about engineering, computer science, and maths is that you can apply all of these methods that you learn about to every single area of science, research, industrial development. And there's some super cool things that will shape the development of the future decades. And with computer science and maths, you can really touch on all of these areas and make a difference. So I think at this point now, still at a very early stage, I've just started my PhD, so I'm definitely the most junior here. What's exciting me about being a young professional in this area is definitely the possibility of touching on every single cool research opportunity in medicine, climate science, policymaking. There's really a world of opportunities, which is super exciting, I think.
Wonderful. Famke, shall we go to the next one? And I guess I need to speed up because I'm slow. So are there any common misconceptions you've seen women associated with such career paths? So Tara, can I ask you about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question because I think the word misconception means that there's sort of a there's a correct way to understand the state of the world. And I think given the complex nature of, in general, all human activities, but in particular, creating technology, let's say, to simplify the conversation and sort of avoid this sort of dichotomy that you and you were like debating before. The reality is that the truth is embedded in a social setting where, it's not clear what the true, if you remove all of the social context, it will be, but I think for me, the hardest is the concept, the concept of a sort of a single tortured soul that sits alone and, makes these genius sort of projections of what to do or how to solve a problem, that I think is the really difficult concept that I feel like it's a turnoff for many folks who, and maybe it's the reason you're reacting to sort of math being the cool thing. For me, the idea of having a private space to sit and think and enjoy the kind of discoveries that that we think about is a joy. It's not that like you have to be really boring or really great genius to do well in Math Olympiad. It's also having that space to fail and struggle with the concept and finally work it out. It's such a pure joy, and it's such a privilege to have that space and not get caught up in the self-doubt and so on. So I just want to sort of emphasize that I don't see this this separation of the genius private introverted, sort of math genius versus the sort of outgoing creative person who gets to change the world. Very useful. And I think that's what I would try to refrain from, because I think I'm very motivated by having the space of, and this was something I was trying to very painfully and unsuccessfully to respond to Tali, who asked me in the chat about the sort of cross-disciplinary exposure versus in-depth knowledge, is that the reality is time is, of course, limited, and you have to do a trade-off between how you spend your time. But I stay away very purposefully from these binaries, because I think it's causing us to doubt ourselves when there are only 4 of us in the field. If there were 50-50 women and men, you would always find an example of a woman that would look like you, and it would not scare you that you're not good at what this takes to do. But when there's only 3, and let's say those 3 are particularly introverted or extroverted, it really will have an impact of how you actually how you understand yourself. So in that sense, I try to avoid it if it's useful. It's not reality. It's not, so I can't say it's a misconception, because I really don't know what the truth is, but I avoid that binary because I've seen myself struggle with it. Do I have the genius of my friends who did Math Olympiad and I was like to succeed in the field, and I've not find it very useful of an anxiety in the long term. But it's not a misconception. I don't know what it is.
Thank you, Tara. No, very, very eloquent. Ioana, anything to add?
Sure, yes. I can talk a bit about my experience with computer science, because I remember how in high school, many people, maybe like including myself as well, thought that maybe the main career path to pursue if you do computer science as a university degree would mainly be programming or like software engineering. And I think this may be because people don't consider that much the interdisciplinary aspects of science, like we've also discussed in this panel. Because, for instance, even though my undergraduate degree was computer science, then when doing my PhD research, I could explore like many different fields. And for instance, the work that I'm doing now is very, very interdisciplinary, like at the intersection of machine learning and healthcare. So I get to apply my knowledge from computer science, but also interact with people from another domain, because here it's very interesting to like talk to clinicians to understand which problems in healthcare require coming up with new solutions and which problems require new methods to solve them. And that's something that we can do as computer scientists to like help these people from a different field. So I'd say like it's important to maybe for like high school people to like also talk to people who have pursued these careers in science and like understand like what are all of the possible paths they can take, rather than like have a misconception about like maybe one or two restricted paths that people often associate with such careers.
Thank you so much, Ioana. Very good point. Famke, shall we go to the next one? Can you tell us what you found most challenging in your careers, in your professional career so far? And Effie, even though you have not started that long ago, I'm going still to start with you.
Thank you, Michaela. So the challenge was the following. The beginning of my PhD coincided with the financial crisis in Greece in 2010. And that was a very unfortunate coincidence. So this fact, along with the fact that I am a woman, made things more difficult to progress my career, and especially to people, to connect with people from all over the world. But thankfully, after many years of hard work, I can say that these barriers now, I have overcome these barriers, and I'm in a position in which I'm happy with my career. But that was the challenge that I have faced.
Thank you so much. Janning, you are really such successful professionally. Very few women in our world are directors at IBM. So did you encounter any challenges of any kind in your professional career?
Thank you, Michaela. Certainly many, many. And probably one of the biggest challenges I can think of is to get my voice heard and understood. And so some of it is due to external factors, like, we have all heard a lot about what women have to overcome in a male-dominated work environment. But what I want to talk more about perhaps is also it has a lot to do with developing my own voice to effectively convey, my ideas, my vision, and my results. And it took me quite a while to actually find that voice. I started out being way too timid and differential and not giving enough credit to my own ideas. But then I also went through a stage when I tended to be a little too defensive. And I finally, at some point, I realized that I would be much more effective in getting my points across if I stopped being defensive. I came to appreciate that I'm most effective if I communicate with confidence, but at the same time also am comfortable with not knowing all the answers, with making mistakes, right? So bottom line is, take it easy. Everyone is ignorant of something and everyone makes mistakes. So I think finding that voice is probably one of the biggest challenges in my career.
So wonderful and so powerful, I think, for us all. Shall we move, Famke, to the next one? So what kind of support or resources did you find most useful in your career path from high school to where you are now? And I'm going to direct this question more to the younger panelists, such that hopefully you can connect with some of our attendees. So Alize, can I start with you?
Of course. I would say that the main challenges that I faced up to now were mostly, on the one hand, kind of daily struggles of studying STEM, imposter syndrome, this kind of confidence issues, general workload, these sorts of ideas. And on the other hand, also more maybe towards the later stage of my studies, the kind of uncertainty around job opportunities, possible PhD, the kind of decisions that I had to make related to my studies and my career. And in both cases, I found that really having a support network really helped me. So maybe for the first case, kind of day-to-day problems, having really a support network of people around me having also people who do similar things to me, who are in a similar situation, other girls maybe who do a similar path of studies, really help to kind of root the issues, talk about them, talk through them with people to overcome them. And on the other hand, also for then career choices, talking to maybe more senior people, so having a network of people to talk to go through possible options, discuss opportunities, maybe more senior people like even Mihaela in my case. So I think it always looking around my own network and reaching out through social networks or whatever resources are online to really talk about the issues that
and in the future we create the WeCREATE initiative.
Exactly. So I think this is really useful.
Build a bigger
and in
network.
my case, it really helped to talk through things. So hopefully this will help some girls as well.
Effie.
For me, the first thing is the support of my family and of my colleagues. To me, this has been the most important thing. The second thing that was crucial in developing my career was the early career research fellowship that I was awarded from the Turing Institute. And it would be amazing through this initiative, Mihaela, to give the opportunity to have fellowships for young women. I don't know if there are many fellowships for young women. Okay, the Turing Fellowship was not about women in early stages of their careers, but it would be very important to give this opportunity to women, and especially to encourage them to follow this route of math, engineering, and applied sciences. And the third thing, which I found quite crucial, is very constructive feedback. So during my Oxford years, people were harsh. So I was getting much criticism towards my work, much criticism towards my ideas. And at the time, I thought that this was harsh and this was bad and that was discouraging. But actually, this was crucial in order to become better, in order to have better collaborators, in order to investigate more of my ideas, in order to explore new fields. So we should be open to criticism. And I know that this is a stereotype, but potentially women, especially women at the very beginning of their career, should not fear working and collaborating with people who have a reputation of being harsh and difficult. Because through these people, they will have the opportunity to become better. So in the short term, their life would be difficult. However, in the long term, this will pay off a lot.
Thank you so much. So true, Effie. Ioana.
So I agree with both Effie and Alice. I would say that I think the most important thing is like having professors and advisors that are supporting your work and that are pushing you to strive for your best, essentially. So I would start from saying, like, from high school, I have really appreciated the fact that my teachers have encouraged me to like participate in this like Olympiads in like computer science, physics, and math, because like this helped me to like get exposure to STEM subjects early on and like made me realize how much I enjoyed them. And then also, like, as Alice was saying, talking to older students to like seeing what career paths they took. And then, for instance, seeing older students like studying computer science and like hearing them like how much they enjoyed their work, like, was really motivational for me. And then also I would say being able to like explore various opportunities and various courses to like understand what you like the most, because I only realized how much I like research was by being able to do my master's course that involved a research project. And then that point, when I was able to explore all of my ideas and be able to be creative, that's when I realized I really wanted to pursue a PhD and have a career in research. And I also can't like not mention my PhD advisor, Mihaela, because I think she has helped me a lot in like the way I think about problems and the way I approach these research problems and like how I am able to like come up with creative solutions to them. So I think like for PhDs, I think it's very important to find an advisor that helps you enhance your creativity and that pushes you to like achieve your best.
Thank you, Ioana. I'm blushing. Famke, final question for our panelists. Would you mind? And since we have limited time and I want to give everyone else the chance to ask questions, I would like to ask you to give no more than 1 minute answer. What advice would you give our audience? Janine, I'm starting with you.
All right. Thank you, Mahela. I'll try to be fast. I guess I'll say 3 things again, very fast. First one is follow your passion. I, have always been interested in science and engineering as way to find, creative solutions to challenging real world problems. But I really didn't truly find my passion until I got into healthcare, applying machine learning to healthcare about 12 years ago. And I really devoted my body and soul to it since then. And that has by far been the most satisfying period of my career. And number 2, which I won't elaborate too much on, is to be fearless when it comes to pushing boundaries, not be afraid of taking on something that's completely new. And the third one is just really delighting learning. I think, math, computer science, and engineering really provides more opportunities than any other field, in my view, to learn and challenge and really delight your mind.
Wow, so wonderful. Tara, I'm coming to you.
I guess the advice I have is if I'm just assuming that people who would be looking at these careers, this is their passion. I agree with Jian Yang that if it you should really follow your passion. But assuming that that's your passion, if you ever encounter a difficulty, verbalize that. It's very likely that you are not the only person who is experiencing this, and that's sort of building a community where you feel safe to say, I feel undermined, I feel questioned with no reason or whatnot. That gives you a sort of a sense of reality that often I have found, oh, this is not only my problem, this is a problem that others have encountered. And then with that realization, there are resources that you learn about. So fortunately, we live in a world that there are people that are committed, like Mihaela and Femke, to think about providing resources to address the structural inequities that really we find ourselves in front. So just verbalize it and look for resources, and hopefully, you'll with the strength in yourself, you can get over the challenges.
Thank you, Tara. Effie.
Help others, be nice, be strong, do the right thing, and last but not least, don't fear becoming unpleasant if you think that you are right.
Ioana.
I have an advice more for people who are thinking about choosing their career. And this is maybe I think the most important thing is for them to try to talk to as many people as possible and at least consider a career in STEM, because it's wonderful, and try to get an exposure of what that type of career would be. And also try to explore as many courses and as many projects as possible to find out what you most like and what you're most passionate about to work on.
Alize.
I mean, all of the advice being given is already amazing, and I totally agree with all of it. And what I'm going to say is probably going in the same direction. Is just, to go for whatever you might have in mind, whatever you dream of. Just go for that job. Reach out to that person that you would like to work with, and more often than not, you're going to get what you want. And encourage others to do the same.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Famke, I guess we can now take questions from all the audience.
Yes, thanks everyone. This is really inspiring. We have a few really good questions in the chat. So I was just going to ask people to unmute themselves to ask their questions. We'll have about a minute per question to answer these. So the first question was from Gemma. Gemma, would you mind unmuting yourself to ask your question to the panel?
Yes, no worries. I hope you can hear me.
And if you can
okay.
come on video, Gemma, we would love it. But you don't need to. But
I will attempt to do my best on that. No, it's great presentations, everybody. Great to hear all of your thoughts on this. So recently we were having a great big long discussion where I work about whether people who aren't in STEM can be innovative. So it led to the discussion is, what is the difference between innovation and creativity? Is there one? And I just wondered if the panelists would like to have a say on that.
So who would like to answer that question? Is there anyone who's got good thoughts about the differences between creativity and innovation?
Go ahead.
I'm going to jump, but I think that all of you should. I think that they both are important. Innovation is to some extent, to me, one type of creativity. It's not the only one. In research, we often want to be innovators. We want to be the first to innovate, to come up with an idea, to push the boundaries. This is one type of creativity, but it's not the only one. At other times, creativity is thinking out of the box about solving a real life problem, like Janine was saying. Taking some problem that we see around us, it could be a technological problem, it could be a social problem. And that's, I think, what I like about being an engineer and computer scientist, is that we can take something very real around us, like Tara was mentioning as well, and solve it in an interesting way. It may not be innovation, but it's creativity, because we need to put our mind to it to make it happen. And it's creativity also because after we solved it, we don't need to redo it again. It's solved. We can move on and do something else interesting. I don't know whether anyone else wants to say anything.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would just add, I think creativity is prerequisite for innovation, right? You have to be creative in order to get to any innovation, but it's not sufficient. There are other things that are also needed to get to that innovation. And my interpretation is innovation is, for it to be innovation, it has to have some real world impact, right? So again, I think one great thing about being in, math, computer science, and engineering is we are the ones who get to be both creative and innovative, because I think there are fields where you can be creative, which don't necessarily lead to innovation, whereas we are in a field that we really get to do both.
Next question.
That's great. Next question was from Tali. Tali, would you mind unmuting yourself to ask your question?
Sure. Hi there, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to all the panelists and Michaela for organizing. So my question originally was focusing on what Tara had said about how she was inspired by the way that the eye visualizes and kind of analyzes different data, and how it was then related to sensors. But I mean, if any of the panelists want to weigh in on the question, like, that would be amazing. It seemed as though creativity was then linked to being able to take inspiration from one discipline and apply it to another. So in balancing the depth versus the breadth of career building, how would you advise going about that? And yeah, that's the essence of the question.
So I'm going to take a shot at it, because I was trying so hard to write something and it just got longer and longer. And so I think the question you raised is exactly the question that I have grappled with my technical solutions, right? In the sense that if you're looking for a goal, you have this ability to do wide search and put a wide net and listen to lots of ideas and lots of different ways of solving a problem. And then when you kind of find it and you really want to know, is this really a cat or the cap of a person who intruded in my house, then you have to go deeper and just really focus and zoom in your attention. And in terms of doing this in real life, it's always the challenge, right? And I think to the question, even thinking deeply about very wide questions that are like coming up in different fields, but then let's say, can I come up with one abstract, simplified, missing a lot of the details framework that can capture some of the aspects of the problem, and all of these is sort of the more narrower way of thinking about these bigger questions in their full complexity. I think a mixture is needed, and I think that's where I tend to think it's, kind of following your own personality traits and your own interest will be the best lead. There's no one size fit all. You just have to figure out what it is that it personally works for you. I have had some number of PhD students, and every single time I recruit a new one, the question will be, what is their path? And so far I've been humbled. I'm sure Mihaela can attest to this, as how different people get to that point, and how different trajectories. So there is really no good one way to do that. It's just more the person you are, and what gives you the most satisfaction early on, so that you feel more steady tackling the challenges that come up, because they're going to get hard. If they're problems worthy of attack, they attack back, right? They don't just solve one after the other. You have to really persist, and so you just have to figure out what keeps you motivated and excited to go at it over and over. Sorry if it's not
That's
a very
great. No, it's great. Thank you.
useful answer.
We have another question from Isha. Isha, would you mind unmuting yourself to ask your question?
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to ask, as everybody has such strong successes here, is it ever okay to fail, or rather to not fully succeed in what you're doing, and to just take that mental break from all this hard work?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I was trying to not talk too much, but I was thinking a very important part of creativity is failing, and being comfortable with failing, and learning how to fail. It's almost like as you age, I was looking at a schedule of classes in my gym, and it's like how to fall. There's a classes how to fall so that you don't hurt yourself, right? So I was thinking there should be a class on how to fail for students, so that you learn, because I personally feel like every time I didn't fail and I got lucky and succeeded right away, it was worse for later on when I had, it's almost like your immune system built up. So you should be comfortable with failure. And that's what I was saying. You should be comfortable that enough, but that you come back to it, because if you don't fail, you haven't tried something interesting, right? It's like playing tennis. If you don't miss the ball a million times, you won't become the best tennis champion, right?
Right. And on that one, I need to jump in, because it's such an important one. Thank you, Esha, for putting that question. One thing that's good about getting older after your study, in your courses, if you are now still taking classes, whether you are in high school or in undergraduate studies, or you need to take a certain number of classes and pass them to move on. But what's great about finishing with studying is that you fail, but you also, in this way, you discover certain things that you can redo again. You can do them differently or avoid them altogether. I was for quite a number of years a professor in engineering, and I used to be telling my undergraduates, I used to hate a certain set of classes as an undergraduate. I was not good in them. I didn't like them. But you know what? After I finished, I didn't need to care about them, and I could focus on what I do like and what I do enjoy. And yes, certain things will get stronger, but certain things you can avoid altogether and focus on what you do like and build on top of it. That's the great thing about being done with studying. Sorry for being boring, but that's the good thing. So you don't need to be good in everything. Don't think that you need to be good in everything to enjoy it or to be extraordinary. You can be extraordinary in this and very bad at some other subjects. That's absolutely fine. This is the good thing about growing up.
Yeah, I fully agree with that as well. We have time for one last question. We're overrunning a little bit, but people are hanging on. So I think we'll take one more from Lingan. Lingan, could you unmute yourself to ask a question?
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your event and everyone's effort for helping the people. And my question is, what's your advice for people like me who is basically have a goal or have a kind of passion to pursue in such field, related field, in such like I'm more interested in network science, but I'm not this background. Background is in different areas. So if there's some kind of women in such kind of career switch, do you have kind of advice or how to find the right community, the support network? Do you have any advice or guidance for people like me? I think I'm not the only people who is thinking about this transformation. Thank you.
Can somebody take it? Otherwise, I will take it. Let me start and hopefully.
Go ahead.
Tara, go for it.
I just wanted to say that you're absolutely correct, and that this is not only you. That's what. Thank you for verbalizing this. And there is an interest, and I think because we develop our personalities different times, different socioeconomic backgrounds. There are programs, at least, that are being developed for students who, we call them non-traditional paths, that they would want to come. So my suggestion is look locality-wise. If you're attached to a particular locality, try to identify resources that are available for finding the pathway, and that usually means taking a few basic classes to bring you to the point that you feel comfortable you can apply, and then get resources in that sense. So but I want to emphasize that this is a realization, I think, worldwide, that if we want to increase the number of women in STEM, we have to create more sort of pipelines.
And I think that thank you, Tara, for that. So another thing to say about this linear is, as was emphasized by all the panelists, what's interesting here is this interdisciplinary. So, and as Ioana, I think, most eloquently put it, it is not only about programming, or it's not only about engineering in a certain way, or maths in a certain way. It's about engaging with a certain domain. So if you are passionate about something, I don't know what it is, education, the climate, a smarter planet, you can get involved through your knowledge, through your passion, and then learn something about maybe programming, computer science, engineering. So those skills can come as a secondary aspect, but you can get engaged with them and use your current strength or passion and add programming and engineering to enable you to make a change in that area. So don't be afraid, don't feel that you have nothing to bring, that you need to start from zero. Instead, capitalize on what you like, or what you know already, or what you are passionate about, and bring these other skills in such that you can transform that.
Excellent. And I guess I would just add to that, to what Tara and Michaela said, right, is one thing I would say is don't feel that you have to learn everything while you're in school. You have to get to learn all of these, even though, as Tara mentioned, it's wonderful that schools are working to offer more of these cross-disciplinary kind of opportunities. But do keep in mind, you all have a lot of opportunities to learn after you start working as well. And one of the advice I give to people when they try to decide where to go to work is, to me, the most important thing is go where you can continue to learn. Right, where you have other people, other coworkers, where you can see that there will be opportunities for you to grow, to discover different areas, different viewpoints, different angles, and picking up new skills altogether.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for your advice. And may I ask another question? That do you have a kind of, how can I put it, community or resource? I feel like I have some friends who have similar question, a similar problem to have the career switch, but basically we feel very isolated. We don't know where to find the resources, and we just only 2 or 3%. So for women, it's like basically this is what it is. So
Thank you for this. So maybe this is a good idea, maybe for a future session, we hope to every few months to have some of these get-togethers. And maybe in one of the future sessions, we can come together and talk about how can we get women from other careers to migrate to this one. So let's do that, Famke.
Yes, yeah, that's a very good idea. So
But in
yeah,
short time, maybe we can finish today. But
yes,
we'll get together again, Lingan, and we'll take this as an action point.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, first of all, thank you very much to our speakers today for the brilliant tips and advice and the inspiring words to everyone. Thanks to all the attendees as well. We hope you really enjoyed our first event. I just wanted to mention we have a second session on June the 8th. This will soon be up on our website. And if you have subscribed on the website for updates, you will get an email about this. Today's session will be uploaded to YouTube at some point next week. We will follow up with an email with a link as well. And we will have more WeCREATE videos up on our website soon. So yeah, like Michaela said, we would really like to hear your ideas for future sessions. So we're open to suggestions, and we would like to hear from people what they struggle with or what they would like to learn. So you can email me. My email address is fc414@cam.ac.uk. We are also looking for WeCREATE ambassadors. So if you want to be even more involved with WeCREATE and join us for some brainstorming sessions and to help us to develop WeCREATE further, then please drop me an email and I'm happy to talk about this with you and see what we have in mind to grow our community and our network. So yeah, please, if you are interested in becoming an ambassador or have any questions, please email me again on the same email address. And yeah, let everyone know about these sessions. We would love for more people to join us. Our website is WeCREATE.academy. So please help us spread the words. And yeah, thanks everyone for attending the session. Thanks to our wonderful panel for your contribution. Thanks for sharing all your questions with us. I'm sorry we didn't have time to go through them all, but there will be more sessions in the future. We hope you enjoyed it today, and we hope to see you again. Goodbye for now, and thank you very much.